It was us, and now he had become the face for Samo.
But tonight we're lucky enough to have with us probably the most language-oriented of all graffiti artists in New York, Samo, and his associate. Samo, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Samo. Well, you know, you see it written on the walls and you don't know how to pronounce it. And do you write something different every time, or do you write the, you know?
I've read the same thing before, just, it all depends, you know, like how inspired I feel.
At a certain point, you saw graffiti, Samo is dead.
So Jean, you know, here he is killing Samo, because he's the only one that ever wrote Samo was dead. I never wrote Samo was dead. And as a result, it damaged our relationship.
That was the point where Jean-Michel began to assert himself as the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat.
I never went to an art school. I failed the art courses that I did take in school. I just looked at a lot of things, and that's what I think I learned about art, by looking at it.
When we met in the late 70s, one of the things that made us become really good friends is we both spent a lot of time going to museums as young kids. And somehow or other the idea popped up, like, let's start a museum club. And Wednesday was the day when we would hop in a cab and head up to the Metropolitan Museum. Jean-Michel and I would often act like we were art students when we would come here. We'd have our little sketch pads acting like we were sketching.
These are all school of Caravaggio, by the way. Young black man in the painting up there, nice.
Caravaggio, just so great. Me and Jean-Michel talked about this. We dug him and we did some reading about him, and the fact that he carried a sword was pretty bad boy for that time period. You know, like you see it in movies, people carrying swords, you just think it was a regular thing. But if you carried a sword, you were gangster. You carried it because you knew you were going to use it, or you were not afraid to use it. So some real bad boy business going on. This guy invented creative lighting. It's just amazing, you know. Chiaroscuro, light to dark, baby. Simple stuff, basic stuff. Pretty good crown he's got on there. You know, the crown was a significant part of early graffiti. You would put a crown over your name if you felt you were worthy. Jean would get a good kick out of that guy's crown. This is Autumn Rhythm, so this is a really famous Pollock, and I remember Jean and I looking at it, appreciating it, and also talking about the fact that at this time in the early 50s when these paintings were being made, Jackson Pollock's studio was in the village, and he was going to jazz clubs. And this is something that's not often talked about, the fact that the abstract expressionists were developing at the same time as bebop music and the improvisational nature that was going on in there. Because of the racism at that time, a lot of critics and art historians wouldn't really elaborate on the fact that, I mean, you could see the improvisation going on, and I remember Jean-Michel and I talking about that right here in this building. I remember talking to Jean about how the insides of the subway cars at that time were just blitzed with tag over tag over tag. There was an unmistakable connection between Pollock and, interestingly, this Franz Klein over my shoulder, like that broad brushstroke, that calligraphic energy. It just was just crazy, undeniable, you know? Ah, man. cool. Like I remember me and Jean would come here to Museum Club. You know, we had to talk about Pablo, but what was really interesting, particularly with this piece, you could see the Cubist period had unleashed, and that whole period was a breakout moment when Picasso got hip to what Africans were doing and how they were depicting the image. It just broke the whole mode of European artists trying to recreate exactly how the image looked, perspective, all that kind of stuff. Just smashed the game, broke it wide open. Once again, that African influence, you know, you need to recognize, baby, from the motherland. Dora Ma, you know, she was a hot one. Can't you tell?
Back on the street again. The Lower East Side. It looked like a war zone. Like we dropped a bomb on ourselves. But it was okay.
The star of Downtown 81 is Jean-Michel Basquiat. And it's not a documentary like a lot of people think it is. It's a fairy tale of what our life was back then.
Come on, let me see your painting.
It's a story of a struggle artist who goes around the city to sell his artwork to pay the rent.
This is really nice.
Thanks.
You want to sell it?
You want to buy it?
I'd like to buy one, but I can't even afford your painting.
You have to realize that he really didn't have money and no job, and we bought him a lot of canvas, and we needed that painting for the story. And so the first paintings he did were really for the purpose of the film.
Hey man, that's private property.
Hey, my man, I'm a taxpayer. I can paint any way I want to paint. They chose to focus on Jean-Michel as the kind of star of this movie, and we all had little scenes and cameo scenes in this little snapshot of the world we lived in. He's serious, man. You want to check him out. A pre-gentrified, gritty, grimy, extra fun New York City.
I've met Jean-Michel Basquiat in 1981. He was working on Downtown 81, the film. So he told me he was living in the production offices for the film, which was a storefront somewhere. He very quickly moved into my apartment. It just happened. I don't feel entirely responsible. He just moved in. We both were bi-ethnic, bicultural. I'm half Palestinian and half English. He was half Puerto Rican and half Haitian. We both had very authoritarian, proud fathers that were tough.
He stuttered a little. His mom had been institutionalized, and that was a very sad point for him, and it made him terribly sad to tell me. And he would stutter even more when he talked about her.
I'd come from Canada at the age of 20 to the East Village to be an artist.
Every artist, whatever you were also in a band. You had to be. If you weren't in a band, you were like lame. Jean-Michel Basquiat made this decision that we were going to start a band.
John wanted me to be a part of that band as well. I showed up to the first rehearsal. I was going to do scat rapping or whatever, but I was like, I fell back. It wasn't for me.
And we were just jumping around with names, and we really weren't sure what it was. And then one day, John stops and says, I know the name now. Gray. I believe the reason that it was spelled with an A was named after Gray's Anatomy, which was a book that was very inspiring for Jean-Michel Basquiat as a young child. He was hit by a car.
And the music he made was great. The collage aesthetic is there, whether he's doing music, whether he's doing poetry, whether he's doing painting.
Jean-Michel was painting or drawing constantly. There was a drive there that I've never really seen before. At that time, there were a lot of burned out buildings in the East Village. He couldn't afford art supplies, so he would bring things from the street. He would bring doors, wooden doors, from these burned out buildings, and he would paint on that. We would get in arguments. I was the one working and supporting both of us, and he wasn't contributing. He would always answer my concerns with the reassurance that he would be famous very soon and wealthy, and that he would look after me. That would end the argument. I mean, what could I say? The first painting that he sold was to Debbie Harry from Blondie for $200. And that was a lot of money to us at that point. So we went out to dinner in a Chinese restaurant on 2nd Avenue. And just an ordinary restaurant, but this was a real treat for us because we were so poor. It was very special, and he was so happy and so proud.
Yeah, Jean-Michel's in the video, yeah. I had wanted Grandmaster Flash to come and be in the video for the part when she starts rapping. She mentions me. Fab, I afraid told me everybody's fly. She said,